Everybody, I need more controversy in my life, so I'm going to discuss a very controversial subject. You probably think it's Roe v. Wade or recent presidents or the border, but it's something much more controversial than that. Hendrix or Clapton? I hope you'll consider watching. Yeah, Hendrix or Clapton, that's a good subject, isn't it? It kind of goes back to the days of the Beatles or the Stones. And let me just say, I'm not going to cop out. At the end of this video, I'm going to tell you my preference anyway, Hendrix or Clapton. I hope you'll put down your thoughts in the comments. I know everybody will probably have some thoughts on this subject. Just a little disclaimer, I love both guitarists, and needless to say, they're both in their own categories, and sort of the cop-out thing to say, and it's really actually true, that it's sort of apples and oranges. They both played differently and had different approaches to the instrument, different approaches to music itself, and they were both peerless in the way they went about it. But I'm not going to go that route. I'm gonna actually make a choice, I guess, as it were. The second thing is I'm going to limit looking at Clapton to Derek and the Dominoes coming out in 1970, because I only think that's fair. And what an important point that Hendrix died. He never got to live through the 70s. And look at all the great music that was on FM radio in the 70s. You know, right when he died was when production was getting so much better, and he kind of missed it, you know. I mean, even listen to an album from 68 and then from one in 71, you start to get that really big, warm FM radio sound in the 70s, and the bands were bigger. A lot of times the guys were a little older and more experienced, and there was some great music in the 70s. Clapton was able to participate in that awesome decade. Hendrix was not. And so that's really an unfortunate point, and in a way that colors the whole discussion, because you had such a great life cut so short. It's got to be one of the most tragic deaths, certainly in music history and rock history, no doubt. But just when you think about all the things he could have done. The other thing that, though, is, you know, in 1970 or in that period, there were a lot of great guitar players that were kind of right under Hendrix. I was kind of thinking of Johnny Winter, kind of someone who could fill stadiums just for the sheer joy. You know, people would fill the stadium just to hear him play the guitar. You know, within a few years, he was kind of playing little clubs, and he died just a few years ago, and he actually played by my house to just a few people, and from what I understand, it was kind of a sad night. So you don't know how anyone's going to end up. I mean, Hendrix might have had a whole nother saga and been washed up, or kind of a Trivial Pursuit question today. You know, like Alvin Lee was another one. You know, he's a great guitarist, but he was almost as big as Hendrix there in that period, and he's still around. But there are plenty of people that were really famous, great guitarists, maybe not right with Hendrix, but just maybe under him. Some of them went on, like Santana or something, to be huge legends with big storied careers. Some of them didn't. So you never know. But what do I think? Hendrix versus Clapton. Well, I guess, first of all, both were great guitar players, and I don't think, you know, Hendrix could play things that Clapton couldn't play, or vice versa. So I'm going to say they were both outstanding guitar players. They had somewhat different styles, but, you know, in some ways they had somewhat similar styles. They set their amps differently and maybe played with a different approach, but they both came out of those old blues contexts, and I think they were both peerless guitar players. Now, today, I think newer styles of guitar with shredding and some of the sweeping arpeggios, finger tapping, and some of the spread chords people learn now and things. I don't think many, if any, guitarists did that back in the 60s when Hendrix and Clapton were kind of starting out. Maybe you might have heard something like that in some jazz or something, actually, but not really, you know, rock guitar playing. And so guitar playing itself has changed a lot since since Hendrix died. And Clapton still kind of plays with that old school style. I guess one point, though, is I think Hendrix might edge out Clapton when it comes to that really epic, you know, party rock and roll sounding solo. I just remember you know, some of his albums that are considered sloppy. You know, they didn't have a lot of tight songs. Some of those later albums actually sounded better than like Axis Bold and Love and things. You know, like And the Gods Made Love and some of those later albums he did right before he died. I think it had the sloppiness and the self-indulgence of the late 60s, but his guitar sound was just great. And I think that's a mantle that was picked up by people like Robin Trower, that really epic blues, you know, just and I love that. And I think Hendrix takes that prize, really. And it's too bad he didn't, you know, even whatever had happened in the 70s, it's too, you know, he would have been in some great power trios. That's good old power trio rock. Like I said, I feel like of all the great guitar players, Robin Trower might be someone who really picked up that heavy blues rock, kind of that epic soloing, which Clapton did in Cream. But if you think about it, he kind of I guess he decided he didn't want to do that, and he got into more of a disciplined type of songwriting, relatively speaking. If you want to call Blind Faith or Derek and the Dominoes disciplined, sort of, they were at least an attempt to like have more focus on songs. But boy, in terms of that really epic, turn it up, you know, just Friday night, that really epic sound, which is rock and roll. That is the spirit of rock and roll. That I think Hendrix might get that prize, because as great as Cream was and everything, Clapton, I don't think ultimately became known for that kind of soloing for the most part. And he when he went to Fender, I think for him, it kind of changed his sound. It's funny because Hendrix and like Robin Trower, they play Strats too, but he kind of went in a cleaner sound direction. So you know, almost on purpose, that kind of real Fender amp, that kind of tweed sound, as it were. I also think, you know, neither one was a great singer. Now Clapton ended up singing, you know, famously he did that first solo album. He sang a little bit before that. He sang Ramblin' on My Mind on Blues Breakers. I think he sang Strange Brew, probably Bad. She sang a little bit with Cream, and you can hear him on like some of Sunshine of Your Love and everything, but I think Crossroads. But he wasn't much of a singer. Now he started singing, and I've always thought that was a really important move for him, because look, he's had that independence. He's never been really dependent on other people, and that's because he can sing his own songs. And he has his own catalog now. So as great as he was, if he were like dependent on another singer, you know, like Jimmy Page is with Robert Plant, or Pete Townsend is with Roger Daltrey, you know, to really bring out their main songs, they've got to get another singer involved. And look at Led Zeppelin. I think that's really been an issue with them when they're trying to do all. Robert Plant just doesn't want to sing all those old songs, and you can kind of half understand why if you can't really sing them any well. But I also think that becoming his own singer kind of limited Clapton, because he doesn't really have that epic voice. You know, I think it would have been great to hear him in, like, you know, like songs like Love, Rain, or Me, or, you know, any of those really kind of epic 70s rock, Hotel California. I'm just thinking songs that have that kind of epic feel. And for those, you kind of have to have a really big time singer. So I think that kind of limited Clapton to these tighter little songs, which are great. And you know what? That made him in some ways more successful, I think. And it's given him more of a song catalog, a varied song catalog. And like I said, Hendrix never really got to do that, but I've always wondered what kind of music he would have done had he lived into the 70s. You know, I always thought like people like Curtis Mayfield and Isaac Hayes, he played that kind of real, he would have made a really good like R&B type guitarist. In fact, you know, he came out, I think he played with the Isley Brothers and Little Richard, right? But I could really see him on some of that early 70s R&B, like early Stevie Wonder stuff like that. But we'll never know, you know, we will never know. But I guess my final point is that I do think in some ways they were both equal on guitar. And here's where I'm going to probably get some disagreement, which is fine. Put your thoughts in the comments. I think Clapton is a better musician. And there's a difference between being a good guitarist and a good musician. I think both of them are obviously peerless in terms of guitar, particularly for the eras and the styles that they play. But I think Clapton is an overall better musician. He has a better catalog. And I'm even looking at, you know, just the stuff he did in the 60s up to September 1970. I think he has a better catalog. If you listen to Blues Breakers, those songs have a kind of discipline, but they're also really good kind of club blues, which is kind of freewheeling, but they also have that discipline, you know, All Your Love, Key to Love, you know, Little Girl, all those songs are so well done. And I think he took that song sensibility and he's taken it through his whole career, which is a big part of musicianship. So I think Hendrix had great songs too. He wrote, you know, a lot of his own good songs. Personally, I think Little Wing is one of his nicest songs, but he's got many. But even just looking at his recorded material versus Clapton's, I know Clapton was probably on more stuff all through the 60s for various reasons. But I think Clapton has a better catalog and reflects a better overall level of musicianship. So don't hate on me too much because I love both. But that's what I think. Equal on guitar. Clapton's a better musician than Hendrix was a musician. They were both equal guitarists. Those are my thoughts. Let me know what you think.